Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Singapore Pavilion. May I now invite Mr. Benedict Chia, Director General of National Climate Change Secretariat, to the stage, please. Benedict, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Manfai, for the introduction. So, welcome everyone here to the launch of the Article 6.2 crediting protocol. And if I take a step back and reflect on where we are at right now, last year at COP, we finally settled the entire Article 6 rulebook itself. And under this Article 6 rulebook, which now has all the operational details needed to move into the implementation stage, we have this important pillar called Article 6.2. Article 6.2 is a more decentralized approach towards crediting, in contrast to Article 6.4, which is a more centralized mechanism under the UNFCCC itself. 6.2 offers much greater flexibility and diversity in terms of pathways for countries to customize different approaches that best meets and supports their needs and their national circumstances. Under 6.2, there are many sovereigns out there that are looking at leveraging on independent crediting programs like Gold Standard and Verra. And I think with this in mind, what we wanted to do is to ensure that despite the decentralization, despite the diversity out there in terms of different approaches, we wanted greater harmonization and consistency. We wanted to leverage on what the independent crediting programs have done fairly successfully in the voluntary space and leverage and adapt it towards use under Article 6 itself. So it's really with this end in mind that we work together with Verra, with Gold Standard, to put together this Article 6.2 crediting protocol. It's an effort, it's a drive towards greater harmonization and greater standardization. And this is key if we want carbon markets to work in an effective manner. The work towards this launch actually started almost 3 years ago. We worked very closely with these two standards, as well as with different sovereigns, some of them will be represented on the panel, as well as ecosystem players and various users to customize it itself, to flesh out the protocol, to identify areas where there needs to be greater clarity in terms of how we can ensure alignment with Article 6.2. So I'm very excited to be here with various partners whom we have worked with for more than 3 years to put this together to finally launch it. And I must say, before ending this very short remarks, that this is not the end. This is really the beginning. What we hope to do after the launch is to start road testing and piloting this with different players itself. And hopefully, this allows us to present a simple plug-and-play mechanism towards countries looking to tap on independent crediting programs to assess Article 6.2 crediting pathways itself. So I think without further ado, I pass it on to Hugh, who will give the presentation. Thanks.
We'll now have a video playing by CEO of Verra, Mandy Ramharos.
Bonjour. Hello, everybody. My name is Mandy Ramharos. I am the CEO of Verra. I'm really sorry I couldn't be with you, but I'm excited to share that today we will publish the Article 6.2 crediting protocol developed jointly with the Government of Singapore and Gold Standard, who are in the room with you today. So Ben and Hugh can answer all the difficult questions that you may have. At Verra, we often talk about the carbon markets being such an important instrument because it solves for both decarbonization and for socioeconomic growth, getting climate financing to the right people. For these reasons, we absolutely need the carbon market to scale, to accelerate action on climate. When we talk to buyers, when we talk to investors, when we talk to various players in the market and we ask, why isn't the market scaling? There's a couple of reasons that we hear over and over. Fragmentation in the market, a lack of trust, and a lack of clarity on how the voluntary programs can work together with government-led programs. What this protocol does is provide clarity on how this can happen, how governments and the independent crediting programs can work together. It provides a step-by-step framework to bring together governments and independent crediting programs in order to implement Article 6.2. What this shows is cooperation is possible. It will help build trust and reduce that fragmentation, and very importantly, accelerate climate action. I wish you a very good meeting. Thank you.
I will now invite Hugh Salway, Principal at Gold Standards, to the rostrum, please.
Great, thank you very much everyone for being here. So my name is Hugh Salway from Gold Standard, and I'm here to share a little bit more about the document that we're publishing today, the Article 6.2 Crediting Protocol. And I think the thing to say first, in reflecting on some of the comments that have just been made there by Ben and by Mandy, this really comes from a place of realizing that decentralization is great, fragmentation is not. And so having a decentralized system doesn't need to mean a fragmented system. And so that was really the mantra that we came into when starting this work with Vera and with NCCS and the government of Singapore, looking at how we can take a decentralized system under Article 6.2 and how we can try to bring some harmonization between two of the main standards which will be operating under Article 6.2, but also then looking to work with others as well, so with other standard setters and governments. And really what we've been trying to do in this work is say, how can we make things as easy as possible for governments who may be looking to work with independent crediting programs, whether they are governments looking to buy and use units under Article 6 or governments looking to sell and host projects under Article 6.2. How can we make life as easy as possible for you under Article 6 by creating some standardization in the rules that we apply as standard setters? So that's really the work that we've been doing over the past few years to come to what we've published today, which is a crediting protocol. I'm going to talk a little bit there. I think this explains a bit more about why we wanted to develop this Article 6 crediting protocol. So really creating this harmonized approach that countries can use, enabling countries to leverage independent crediting programs to benefit from the methodologies, the standards that we have set, which can be used under Article 6.2 in the same way that they have been historically in the voluntary carbon market, and then providing procedures that complement what is there under the UNFCCC. And I think that's a really important point to try to bring out here. What we're not looking to do here at all is rewrite in any way what's been adopted with kind of years of hard work in Article 6 rooms. This is really looking to fill in the layer which sits below that. So how do you apply Article 6.2 rules when you're working with crediting programs? So it's looking to fill in that layer, and it's also looking to try to bring a little bit of clarity where things, for obvious reasons, maybe weren't always made so clear in Article 6 rules and where you needed to have some ambiguity. So how can we create something which is a little bit clearer about how Article 6 can be applied? So what are the benefits for a government in working with an independent crediting program? So there have been really strong strides which have been made over the past year by the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, which I think we all really welcome, in making sure that there is a strong mechanism under the UNFCCC which can be used by governments. But we know that there are governments who are also looking to work with independent crediting programs as an option which sits alongside that. And there are multiple benefits for them of doing that. So if you're looking to trade under Article 6.2, as standards, we can manage standard setting for you. We can manage certification for you. There isn't that need to set up your own processes for certifying, for issuing all of these things. This is something which can be managed by standard setters which have experience in this area. Standards are familiar to project developers. If you're looking to develop a project, you know what you're doing under Gold Standard, under Vera, under different standards, and that familiarity can bring speed, it can bring efficiency to the process of delivering under Article 6.2. Countries can maintain control over how they work with crediting programs. There's no need to open up to everything. You can control which programs you work with, which methodologies you approve, in exactly the same way that has been done by the government of Singapore, in the way that they have looked to work with crediting programs. We can lower barriers to implementing Article 6.2 by taking on some of the work which we talked about earlier. And then we can also bring access to some markets which may otherwise not be accessible. So as independent crediting programs, a number of us are recognized under CORSIA, and so CORSIA can be a market which is available for countries who are looking to host projects. So these are some of the benefits which can come with working with independent crediting programs, and some of the reasons why we wanted to put in place this protocol to make it as easy as possible to work across a number of us. So what is the document that we published today? So the Article 6.2 crediting protocol is a document which tries to provide guidance for governments on how you can work with standards if using Article 6. And what does this mean in practice? It means how you can think about the relationship between your national registry and the registry that we will hold as a government. It means understanding how, as standard setters, we will be labeling credits when they come into our registry system, so you can understand clearly how we'll be doing that labeling. It means understanding how we'll be providing data back to governments so that they have a clear understanding that they will get certain data within a certain time in a standardized way across crediting programs to help them to do the reporting which they need to do. And it means kind of understanding how we need to build the right relationships between governments and crediting programs to make sure that Article 6 can work effectively. And so really what we're trying to do here is mean that rather than each standard having their own way of working, and hopefully rather than each government having very different ways of working which don't allow the market to come together, we can try to create some commonality in how we're approaching implementation of Article 6.2. So this fully embraces the idea of working in a decentralized way, but it tries to bring a little bit more standardization to how crediting programs will work. I think I talked a bit about there. So I'm just going to go on next to talk about what comes next. So on the Gold Standard website, on the Vera website, and I believe possibly also on the NCCS website, today you'll be able to find the crediting protocol document. So this is there, this is now publicly available, and we're really interested in feedback on this. This is a version which we want to be kind of understanding feedback on from governments, from project developers, from others as well, whether this is useful, where more clarity is needed. But this is also a version that we then want to go on and test. So we've been consulting a lot with different government partners over the past year, and we're really interested in looking at how some of the ideas in this can be implemented in practice. So we're looking at testing the crediting protocol with governments hosting projects, governments looking to buy credits, but then also with other independent crediting programs who we've been consulting on the way to get to this point as well. So any interested stakeholders can reach out to us, so to Gold Standard, to Vera, to NCCS. And I think I'm going to end there because we're really keen to get into some of the discussion which follows and to hear from some of the partners who we've been speaking to along this way about their different perspectives on these issues. So I think we may now move on to the panel.
Thank you so much, Hugh. May we now invite Adil Hakeem, Senior Manager at the National Climate Change Secretariat, to moderate the panel discussion. Adil, please.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'd now like to invite our panelists, Daeho, Hugh, Kazu, and Rogelio on stage to take their seats. So I'd like to quickly introduce our panelists before we begin the discussion. Firstly, we have Dr. Lee Daeho, Senior Researcher at the Sogang Institute of International and Area Studies. He's worked on climate issues for more than 10 years and is working with the Korean government to scale up Article 6 cooperation in the region. Next, of course, we have Hugh Salway, Principal at Gold Standard. Hugh previously worked in the British government for 8 years, including most recently as its head for international carbon markets. Next, we have Mr. Kazuhisa Koakutsu, Director of the Article 6 Implementation Partnership Center, worked for over 20 years on international market-based solutions, and he's a former member of the Article 6.4 Supervisory Board. Last but not least, Mr. Rogelio Campos, Technical Specialist at the Ministry of Environment of Peru. Rogelio has more than 8 years of experience in climate change and carbon markets and has helped to develop regulations for Peru's national registry. So thank you to all 4 of you for joining this panel. Allow me to kick off the discussion with a few questions on the implementation of Article 6 through crediting programs as well as the challenges. Firstly, to Daeho, is your government considering the integration of independent crediting programs into your Article 6.2 strategy? And what practical benefits or challenges do you foresee in working with independent standards?
Is the mic on? Thank you for inviting me as a panelist. To your question, we are currently developing a plurilateral cooperation model as a pragmatic way to expedite and scale up Article 6 cooperation in Asia Pacific region. And independent crediting programs are a central part of this plurilateral cooperation model. Korea has pursued a bilateral approach to implement Article 6. In fact, we have worked on more than 24 bilateral arrangements with our partner countries, and we have concluded about 16 bilateral arrangements, including 9 formal agreements to date. And however, it's been truly tough going, because despite certain merits of the bilateral approach, such as its inherent flexibility, there are several significant challenges associated with the bilateral approaches. First, the bilateral approach requires considerable resources. Given the sheer number of the bilateral agreements Korea has worked on, the administrative burden is significant, and negotiating each one is truly time-consuming. And moreover, the most significant challenge is establishing mechanisms for credit issuance. Developing a credible mechanism for credit issuance is a formidable challenge that, in my view, few countries have been managed to address successfully. And we believe ICPs could offer a pragmatic and viable solution to this daunting problem. So by leveraging select independent crediting programs at shared infrastructure, we can greatly enhance the administrative efficiency and cost effectiveness of Article 6 cooperation. All countries participating in the plurilateral cooperation model will have access to a common system for credit issuance, thereby reducing the need for bespoke bilateral mechanisms and minimize duplication. We believe this will, to a great extent, address the lack of coherent procedures common in bilateral setups. Relatedly, utilizing select ICPs in a plurilateral setting will help address the growing concern over market fragmentation resulting from the proliferation of bilateral arrangements. Through this approach, we can also mitigate the issue of market fragmentation, such as credit heterogeneity and the resultant low liquidity. Thus, we see significant potential benefits in utilizing ICPs as a common crediting mechanism for Article 6 cooperation. So in this regard, we thank Singapore for excellent work that you've done with the Article 6.2 crediting protocol, and you have performed a great service doing the groundwork for many of us. I'll speak this much for your question.
Thank you very much, Daeho. I hear you about the administrative challenges of bilateral cooperation and how your plurilateral model and ICPs could play a role. I'll turn to Rogelio next, actually. And I'd like to ask what steps Peru is taking to align its national registry and reporting systems with international standards, and how ICPs might help streamline that process.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Well, Peru has a national framework related to Article 6, well, actually related to carbon markets, and includes some activities related to Article 6. So one of them is that the Ministry of Environment of Peru is able to, this is better. It's able to recognize ICP that we call standards as gold standard, BCS, and other ones, and additionally methodologies. From Peru, for Peru, this allows to pick or prioritize that standards or methodologies that they applies to the set of criteria that our national framework includes. And why we use these ICP or methodologies because most of them, most of the project developers knows that the process of these standards. They have a lot of experience and lessons during all this year. So we are trying to use that actually exists. That was the purpose, to include it in our national framework. And of course, to ensure environmental integrity, we apply this set of criteria to to identify those standards that have some aspect that can ensure the environmental integrity. By now, the Ministry of Environment recognized two standards, which are Gold Standard and BCS from Vera. But of course, the position of Peru is to have more options, so the private sector can choose the best that fit better to them. So we are also doing the assessment for other standards like Plan Vivo, Ser Carbono, biocarbon standard, Puro Earth, and others. Because as I said, we want to give the options, of course, options that can that have the criteria that we include in our national framework, but with the purpose that the private sector can choose the better standard for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rogelio. We hear you about how ICPs could help project developers in the private sector. Next, I'd like to ask Hugh regarding what insights have emerged from the first Article 6 labeled projects of Gold Standard and how this relates to the recommendations under the protocol.
Yeah, so I think there's maybe three things which I'd share, three lessons which we've got from the first implementations. The first is, I mean, we're a standard, that's what we are, and kind of in standard comes standardization. And it hasn't always been easy to try to implement what is a really decentralized approach under Article 6.2. So countries have many choices. They have a choice to use national registry, to use international registry, to use and have access to another registry. They have a choice as to when they kind of what triggers their applying corresponding adjustment. They have a choice as to when they authorize. And so trying to set a standard when you have these multiple different choices and many different options of how countries can do this hasn't been simple. So kind of actually translating the rules through to something which is coded into a registry, for instance, isn't always easy. And I think trying to make sure in this kind of protocol that we're standardizing at least between us and Vera, I think is really important. A second lesson is that there aren't that many things which can't be learned from other countries. So every country is unique. Every country has its own national context, which it brings to Article 6. But actually, if a country in one place has a very good letter of authorization template, that can work for others. And if a country has a very good kind of model for working with other standards, that can work for others as well. And so I think learning lessons from what's working in other countries is really important. We don't all need to start from scratch. We can learn from what others are doing as well. And this is something which we look to do as well in standard setting. And then the third thing I think I would share is there is still quite a lot of a lack of clarity on some elements of how do you actually translate Article 6 rules through. So we're working a lot with some governments at the moment on reporting. So how do they actually report on what they've authorized? And when we've been trying to provide that guidance, you look at the Article 6 text and you say, well, actually, I know this very well. I'm not completely sure exactly what this means on the common tabular format and all these things. And so I think, again, this comes back to learning from others. It comes back to the importance of some of the technical expert reviews providing a bit more clarity. But also what we tried to do in this protocol is provide a bit more clarity as to how we see and interpret how these rules can be applied in a way that is kind of credible to try to standardize that as well.
Thank you, Hugh. So I hear you about the standardization challenges and how we can both learn from governments and help governments, which is a good segue to Kazu. Kazu, in your engagement with governments to date, what have you seen as the most significant and common implementation hurdles for Article 6.2?
Thank you very much. My name is Kazu from Article 6 Implement Partner Center. Also pleasure to be here with nice cozy atmosphere. So until COP29, I've been involved in many negotiation process, especially Article 6. So it's kind of first time for me to be a little bit more relaxed atmosphere. So I really kind of really enjoying this kind of atmosphere. Having said that, first of all, because I'm very much kind of involved in negotiation process, so what is the most important thing for Article 6? For me, inclusiveness. That is the key. That actually makes this Article 6 happen. We really wanted to make all the different approaches, independent, standard, bilateral, UN mechanisms, or even domestic actions to be recognized as a cooperative approach, and we can use towards NDC or other purposes, or anything that you want to use. So Article 6 really tried to make that happen within this Paris Agreement architecture. So what's the key? Authorization. Authorization was actually key to really make this happen. Happen means to be agreed. Actually, the authorization was the Glasgow's breakthrough because authorization connects. Whether that is authorized, then you can use towards NDC, towards Corsia. But to do so, you need to fulfill all the requirements. Otherwise, of course, you can do voluntary carbon markets, bilaterals. But this authorization really connects those dots. So what is the significance? Significance is that countries really need to think about, okay, we are really trying to achieve NDC, try to drive down to reductions based on their achievement target. So they really need to think about relationship between their NDC and what you are trying to authorize towards gold standard, which has already been authorized, BERA also authorized. So the important things really from the government point of view, maybe private sector's point of view, what is really key to be authorized? So the relationship between NDC is really the key to understand. But to do so, really government needs to come up with, okay, what's the procedure, what's the framework, and how we really track them, because that is related to the NDC achievement. So that is a really, so that's everything the first time for all the governments. So they need to set up the organization, institutions, they need to set up the registry. Of course, those are also in the progress. They need to also start thinking about those aspects. So that is a really key hurdle right now. I'm also saying this is more like internalizing carbon market into their system. So before Article 6, it's kind of a scattered. But now, I think from my point of view, with the Article 6, we can more unified. We can more integrate into your own NDC, into your action. So you have more options. More options. That's good. You can do bilateral. You can do, the independent credit standard. You have much more access. Maybe some company prefer BERA, some company prefer gold standard, some company prefer more government support. So much more options to really accommodate various cooperation. That is a key for the Article 6. So my message is that Article 6 is really inclusive process. And you can provide more options to make things happen. But to do so, government and us needs to be prepared. Okay, what to be authorized and which options. That is also different by country. And so that's something I really, urge government to come up with this, and also private sector to come forward with your with your ambition, with your investment, to really make things happen. So again, it's already been implementation stage. We have all the rules, but of course we need to learn. But it is a really time to start doing this. And I really also appreciate all the Singapore's work. One of the also very active negotiating the country, but at the same time bringing this kind of initiative forward. So that's I really support and also appreciate this Singapore's support.
Thank you very much, Kazu. Inclusivity is at the heart of Article 6, and the tight link to NDC planning processes is extremely necessary. I've got one set of questions before I move on to open the floor to questions. I would first turn to Rogelio to talk about Article 6 reporting procedures. Rogelio, what steps is Peru taking to align its domestic MRV system with international reporting obligations under Article 6.2? And how do you plan to manage reporting for projects that involve multiple stakeholders that you mentioned?
Thank you, Adil. Well, it's for a government as a supplier party, it's kind of difficult to have a framework that can include all details, considering the different schemes that the buyer party has. So we spent like a year or 1 year or two thinking what is the best way to have a framework that is in line with Article 6 decisions, but also to have this flexibility to include all the cases that we can have. Is in the experience of Peru, the logic, for example, that is behind Switzerland is kind of different from how Singapore see the process of authorization and other related items. So, and of course, it's okay that each country has their own scheme. So as a buyer, as a supply party, we're thinking of flexible frameworks that make that Peru it's able to has a reporting process to each case. I mean, Switzerland, Singapore, and other countries that we can have a bilateral agreement. So actually, the reporting, I mean, initial reports and annual report and others, it's kind of similar that we have in the decisions. So, and actually, on this month, Peru is going to have is going to finish the assessment of its first project to be authorized under Article 6. And for us, of course, it's the first time, and this happened to many countries because Article 6 is a new process. So we are like doing and learning at the same time. And of course, Peru is open to apply and to comply with the requirements of reporting under Article 6 rules. But of course, we know that the way that we choose for do the initial report of this project, we know that there can be that we can have as part of course, as part of the review process of these reports, we can include recommendations. We can include more steps, or maybe simplify some steps about the reporting, because the important also it's that the elements that we include in our reports needs to be okay with the decisions of Article 6, of course. And that is like for everyone can be like, yes, I mean, it's logic that you need to present a report in line with Article 6 decisions. But for many countries, this is a new process. And of course, some elements have different perspective for each country. For example, a cooperative approach. So this is it's not in totally a standardized process, but of course for process like applying ICP or methodologies or using templates, that is an space that of course the standardization is an opportunity. But we also face that each country will have a position or a perspective or a view when they are going to do the report. Peru, of course, knows that, and it's open to improve the process that it's coming this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rogelio. Next, I'd like to ask Daeho, what is your experience with the reporting of authorizations and the application of corresponding adjustments to the UNFCCC?
It may sound strange, but our experience with the actual Article 6 implementation is quite limited, even though we have concluded 16 bilateral arrangements. The most advanced Article 6 cooperation is the one that we have with Cambodia. In July of this year, the government of Cambodia authorized a project involving the distribution of electric motorcycles and charging stations throughout the Cambodia to reduce greenhouse gas in the total amount of 680,000 ton. Of that, 400,000 ton will be transferred to Korea. But the initial report has not been submitted to the UNFCCC, so we don't have the actual experience to share at this point. But I'd like to speak just briefly about the uncertainties that I foresee in relation to authorization, as Kazu and others spoke about. There is a new type of uncertainty which stems from the fact that there is no fixed structural dichotomy between buyers and suppliers in the context of the Paris Agreement. Before, the developing countries were the buyers, or the sellers, or the host country, and the developed countries were the buyers. There was a fixed dichotomy. But now every country has their own NDC, and then that's where the uncertainties or misgivings about authorization stem from. Is it safe for a host country to authorize, and how much? It's a really important question that every developing countries must be asking, because their status of a supplier is not fixed. That depends on whether they achieve their NDC. So this type of new uncertainty is truly new, and Korean government is trying to develop a tool to mitigate this uncertainty. Without addressing this uncertainty, I think there is a clear limit to Article 6 cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daeho. Kazu, I'd like to hear about your experience next. Considering your work in supporting government reporting, what have your experiences been so far, and how do you see the protocol addressing these challenges, and how does it complement your work?
Again, I thank you. And I also try to speak in a more kind of a plain language, not talk too much about the authorization initial report. My simple question is, so okay, with the Article 6, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? That's a real question. Okay, do you want to do something, introduction of renewable energy in the community to try to empower them, try to provide more alternative energy, try to support more reforestation, because we all concerned about climate change. And we wanted to address this. Okay, so what is your solution? So that's a starting point. Maybe you might sound like this is related to Article 6 reporting. Yes, because once you have something to do, then next question, okay, how we can realize this through gold standard methodology or Vera methodologies, or we can go for PACM, or we can go for bilateral or plurilateral. Again, options that Article 6 can provide. That's the beauty of Article 6. But the real question is, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? And what you can do? So to do so, we need more simplicity. We need more easy to make that happen. So Article 6 reporting, for me, needs to be more simple for those who really wanted to use, so that you can more focusing on finding those community, looking for some technology, how you can finance them, and then it's a role of the government to make it more easy to happen. So for this initial report, from my point of view, needs to be more mechanism level, so that once the initial report is done, then you can just choose whatever cooperation you can, or whatever the means, and then you can just focus on. So back to the kind of question on the reporting, I think the government role is really to make it more easy, and then I do think this kind of protocol, and we're also now talking with Vera Gold Standard to make it how to initial report to be more easy, so that once the government authorize like Gold Standard as a cooperative approach, then anything that you do under the Gold Standard could be eligible, Article 6, in certain countries. So that kind of simplicity is much needed. So that's, I think that's the next step. And I do believe Article 6 protocol could also support that kind of process. So the key is how we can do more things without much hurdles with reporting all the administrations. You can more focusing on what you wanted to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazu. Finally, I'd like Hugh to provide us with the crediting program's perspective on the protocol. Of course, you helped to develop it, but broadly, what role can ICPs play in facilitating Article 6 reporting?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, so I think we've talked earlier about the benefits which governments can get from working with crediting programs. I think, I mean, what we've published today is a document, essentially, and it's a document which we hope is helpful. So kind of providing some guidance on how you can work with crediting programs in different ways. But I think what's really important is what comes next, which is where technology needs to come in. So on the point of reporting, how can we structure our systems so that if you're a government which has authorized units under gold standard and you need to fill in your annual report, you can just export the information from gold standard in exactly the format you need, or maybe you can do it through something like the Climate Action Data Trust, and everything is there for you. And I mean, that's the benefit of the work which we've done in this document, is looking at how we can standardize some of the understandings of Article 6, so that if you are this government, you get this same data from gold standard, from Vera, from elsewhere. And so you can focus on the big vision, as Kazu was saying, and the reporting is made as easy as possible because we are providing the information to you to do that well. So that's where we really want to go next. And then looking at how registries can be connected so that all of this data can be passed in real time as well. So I think some of the interesting stuff which will come is what comes next, in how we can make things as easy as possible, building on this document, but then translating that into technology, which makes governments' lives easy.
Thanks, Hugh. Great note on the technology required to make this work, and shout out to Cat Trust, I guess. Cheers, Eva. So, thank you, everyone. I'd now like to open up the floor to any questions, if there are any. Yes, let's get you a mic.
Is there any discussion in the UNFCCC level to simplify the rules for reporting for corresponding adjustment? Because we have many projects like in some small African countries, the total emission of the whole country is not big. I used to work in the pilot ETS in Guangdong province of China, and I remember the largest emitter is around 30 million tons per year. So many African countries, the whole country, their emission is no more than a factory in China. And in other terms, I saw the EOs are simplifying their rules for like CBAM for green claiming. So I want to know if there are any discussion in the UN level for the simplification of the rules for reporting on the Article 6. Thank you.
What's the questions?
Whether there are any discussions at the UNFCCC level to simplify reporting. Yeah, if I understand the question correctly.
Simplifying. At least we don't have any negotiation process until 2028. So we will need to stick on what we have. But my point, again, is how the government can make those reporting to be more simple so that more project developer can focus on what you wanted to do more. So at least the Article 6 is the more party reporting. So the party is reporting to the UNFCCC process. But for the, I don't know about reporting, but the company are doing implementation. And then those are tracked in the registry. So the registry is basically, I think from my point of view, is very important aspects of how those information could be captured. What's happening on the ground, how much credit issued. Those things needs to be, I think those could be more simplified in a way that more technology be used. Like we're also talking about digital MRV, we're also talking about much more easy kind of tracking so that the project developer doesn't need to kind of track everything. So I do believe that there are certain technology that make those kind of tracking more easier, including MRB process. So I hope I answer some of them, but again, we can come back.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, so I agree. So I think in the negotiation process, I don't think there'll be anything for a bit of time. But I guess coming back to the point we were making earlier, there are ways in which governments can make life easier for themselves when doing the reporting. So the point that Kazu was making earlier, when you write your initial report, doing this at a high level. So it's not that every single time you authorize a new project, you have to do a whole new initial report. You can do this in an umbrella way at a higher level. And then some of the points I was making about kind of technology. So I know for the Article 6.4, they're looking to set up a system where your AEF, your annual report, kind of can be automatically generated essentially. And this is what we're looking to do as well. So looking to make it as easy as possible to do this reporting. And I think it comes with time as well. Like there are some examples which I've sort of seen of governments being able to do this really quickly, actually, the reporting. And we can learn from what they do as well. And there's a lot which can be borrowed. So some of the work that we're doing on initial reports with A6IP is looking at a lot of the text which you need for some of these reports can be standard text from Gold Standard, which explains how we manage permanence risk, explains how we manage additionality. And that can just be drawn on by governments rather than having to write this all themselves uniquely every time.
Thank you very much. We've got time for one more question. Yes.
I'm from the Philippines. I'm one of the commissioner of the Climate Change Ministry. First, we want to express our gratitude for the government of Singapore for the first transition credit, the Philippines, with the Temasek Group and the ASEAN of the Philippines. Of course, for the GGGI based in Korea for the first ever floating solar in our country, together with the proposed solarization of the Philippine National Railway. And of course, with the JCM, the rehabilitation of Mount Pinatubo, more than 20,000 hectares, the volcanic eruptions, which is one of the devastated area in our country. On that note, for Article 6 implementations after the standardized protocol, do we have a study wherein with all these projects and programs that we have that are considered to be innovative pilot programs, vis-a-vis the breaching of 1.5 or 2 degree trajectory that we have? We do understand that we breached 1.5 by last year. Having all these programs that we have, the pace or the speed, the timeline, are we at par in so far as the much needed accelerations of all these programs? Thank you.
So if I understand your question correctly, it's about whether after implementing all these sorts of programs, we are on that trajectory to 1.5 or 2 degrees.
Yeah, at the same time, the question also is if we are within the schedule in order for us not to breach 2 degree. Thank you.
Thank you. I think he's asking whether
If I may,
implementing.
at least from my point of view, again, I also make a point of Article 6 is really try to help achieving NDC. NDC is, of course, not just only Article 6. So all your actions are counting towards 1.5 degrees. So the current NDC it doesn't look that path. So, of course, Article 6 can contribute to do more, but it's not only Article 6 can do it. So the whole NDC itself is a matter of subject. So, of course, if we increase more actions, that really counts. It could be through Article 6, it could be through domestic actions, but my point is, again, Article 6 can really accommodate various options to make it more to happen. So I hope I can share my comments.
Can I add on? Yes, to your question, in fact, there is huge gap. The ambition gap, for us to achieve 1.5 temperature goal, our collective emissions in 2030 will have to be around 33 gigaton. But based on our current NDC, our projected emissions in 2030 is about 54 gigaton. So there is 21 gigaton gap, the ambition gap. And there is additional 3 gigaton implementation gap because based on our current policies, our emissions in 2030 will be, collective emissions will be 57 gigaton. So that's where the role of carbon market is really important because Article 6.1 says the purpose of Article 6 is to allow for higher ambition, which means our NDCs are supposed to represent the highest possible ambition that we could do domestically alone, because that's what the parties, the agreement says. Then, with cooperating through Article 6, we can go higher than the highest possible. A case in point is the Korea's NDC. We have our NDC includes it's a 40% reduction compared to 2019 level until 2030. But the 12% reduction will have to come from carbon markets. So our ambition is actually higher than the highest possible that we can do domestically. So this is one example of how we can achieve ambition that is higher than the highest possible through Article 6 cooperation. So this is the role of the carbon market. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, and that's a sobering thought. We're running short on time, so I'd like to conclude the session with a final short question for all of our panelists. In one sentence or two, looking ahead, with the first experiences of Article 6 implementation, what are your priorities for 2026? So we can start from Daeho and we can move this way. One or two.
I'm losing my voice. Okay. Well, our top priority is to take our work further in 2026 in relation to the plurilateral cooperation model. There are several milestones that I can elaborate, but I'll refrain from doing that. Okay.
I mean, there are many. I guess I come back to the point I made earlier. Let's learn from others in 2026. We have some first examples now, some of them good, maybe some not so good, but either way, there are lessons which can be learned from how to implement Article 6. And one of the things which I think we take from this crediting protocol, we've tried to learn from other standards from Vera through this work and also from working with Singapore to understand the government perspective. So let's learn from others to not reinvent the wheel ourselves, but to move as quickly as we can on the wheels that exist.
Yes, I think from my point of view, the tracking registry is really important for next year. So the UNFCCC is going to have an international registry later this year, but almost we're finishing this year. But the next year they are also having a maybe full registry. But same time, many countries are also issuing credit. And like recently, Gold Standard has a mutual recognition with Indonesia. And so how to track those units and how those units are kind of reported as ITOMOS. So infrastructure is very important. So that's the key for next year from my point of view. So we really need to demonstrate how those works. And then actual infrastructure is also now growing. So I think those are key for next year.
Well, 2026 will be the year that Peru will show results. We have a national framework, we have negotiation decisions ready. So 2026, and also we have bilateral agreements, and I hope more than these two agreements that we have. But 2026 will be the year that Peru will show that this big process, Article 6 process, really have results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's our hope for 2026. Thank you to panelists for their insights. We've come to the end of the panel. To those here who are working on Article 6 issues in one way or another, I hope the protocol could prove useful to your work. If you want to trial and test bed it, please reach out to Vera, to Gold Standard, and to NCCS Singapore. Thank you very much, guys.
Can the speakers please stay on stage for a quick photo? Thank you.